Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome and thank you for joining us here at the International Teacher Development Institute. My name is Phil Brown, and as you can see, I'm joined here today.
Hi, my name is Stephen Herder, one of the co-founders of ITDI. And Phil, we're really thrilled tonight to have a couple of young guys in with us on a book they've written.
Absolutely. So we welcome Andy Boon, who some of you have seen before. Hi, Andy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. And also Greg Hadley.
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody.
And wherever you are watching on Facebook, please feel free to say hi in the chat. Let us know where you are, how you're doing. And just briefly introduce Greg and Andy. Actually, we go back almost 2 decades, I guess. And Greg and Andy are both professors in Japan and have their areas of expertise in English language teaching and applied linguistics. Greg and Andy have recently collaborated together on the book that's just come out, Critical Thinking, and we're very excited to have that as our topic today, which has been a hot topic for a very long time as well.
Great. I see we've got people coming in the room already. We've got Maria Ruban from the Ukraine. We've got Sangeta Jolly from India. We had a couple of teachers, Catherine Akasaka in Japan. So people are filing in and grabbing seats while they can. There are only about 1 billion seats available on Facebook. So please grab one quickly.
All right. And hi, Japan, and also Catherine, Tugba, and Wayne as well.
So,
okay, yes.
You gonna take her away?
Yeah, just give everyone a quick overview of what we're going to do today. I think we're going to hand over to Andy and Greg to introduce us a little bit to the topic. And then we'll be talking about some of the key issues that they've highlighted in critical thinking, from what critical thinking is, how we can incorporate critical thinking into classes, and thinking about developing those critical thinking activities as well as conducting research into critical thinking. So,
and it seems like there are lots of keen members from Jolt, friends of ours, who are in the room already, and I think there'll be lots of questions. So we hope that we can get right into it and pick these guys' brains clean in the next remaining 57 minutes we have. Can I start with just a quick process question? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I'm dying to know just how this idea was conceived. You know, sometimes they talk about these projects being a baby, a project of love, but who found who, and how did you guys get going, Andy?
I'm going to pass that one over to Greg.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, it started back in, actually, I think it's 2015 at Jolt. It was in Shizuoka, I believe, at that time. And Chuck Sandy was visiting the conference, and he introduced me to Jill Hadfield.
Yep.
Who she was. Well, she was there at the conference, I think, she was speaking at the conference, of course, but she was also looking for people to write books for her series. And she told me about this series of critical thinking, of course, is part of it. But the series, all of the books in the series have a really interesting concept where you have to have 2 authors.
Yep.
One of them is supposed to be a scholar. I think that's Andy, and someone's supposed to be a materials writer, who is also Andy. The scholar writes the first part and the 4th part, which is a theoretical treatise on the topic, and then ways to do research. And then the materials writer makes of course, the activities in the middle. But yeah, anyway, when she told me about this, I thought, I like the concept of the book. It's really, really interesting. But I let it go at that. I had other things to go. But it was during the election, the American election of Trump, also Brexit. And I began to see just so much in social media, and then connected with that with some of the political developments in Japan and things that students were saying. I thought, you know, there needs to be more done on critical thinking. And I contacted Jill and I said, you know, what do you think about this? Because this is almost nothing really out there in TESOL. I mean, books and textbooks and such, they claim to have critical thinking as part of the things that they teach, but it's hard to see. And I said, what if we did this? And she says, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And this is something that we really, really need. And so I needed to find somebody to work with. I couldn't do it all on my own. I had to find a materials designer. And Andy, I thought about Andy. We didn't know Andy as well at that time.
Right.
So, but I approached him with the idea of the book, the concept. And he just said, yeah, I'm really interested in this. It sounds interesting. And so we got together, and over the next several years, with all sorts of things that happen in the world and in our lives, we finally got this book put together. And
I had a follow-up question that's very timely right now in terms of when you sought out Andy, what kind of skills or talents did you see in him that would, you know, supplement what you were bringing to the book? And then through the process, was there anything else you discovered about him that you want to embarrass him about right now in terms of, yeah? Well,
I knew that I didn't have the ability to make really good materials.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I suppose I would be like some of those people that have lots of good concepts. Their scholarly books are interesting, but when they try to make their own textbooks,
yeah,
and you can think of some people out there that are like that. So I knew that I needed a good materials designer. I knew that Andy was popular in Japan.
Yeah.
And I knew that he was well known, but I didn't really know, you know what he did or how he did it. I just knew that, you know, he was successful in this.
Yeah.
And he's the only one that knew me. I wouldn't have to go approach somebody, you know, totally cold, you know, out there, and, you know, probably have to go through lots of no's before I came to a yes. And Andy's in Japan and close by too, so that there was a chance to actually see and work together with him.
Yeah, he's certainly prolific, isn't he? And
Yeah.
we see him on social media, and you just endlessly crank stuff out, Andy. It's
Yeah.
A credit to you.
He's amazing.
Yeah. What about you, Andy? Just to throw this back, is what were you looking for when you signed on, and what did you learn about Greg through the bromance?
Well, I think, you know, we talk about bucket lists in life, and I do have certain things on my bucket list, and I'd done textbook writing and graded reader writing and article writing, and I've done chapters in academic books, but I hadn't actually done the academic books. So this was an opportunity to work with Greg, who's also prolific in academic writing, with his work in grounded theory.
Yeah.
And to you know, have that experience of getting my name on an academic book. And when we started to work together, you know, we wanted to make it the best we could. Yeah. So not only is it theoretical, but it's also very practical. So if you're a working teacher, you can take the activities that you want from it. And I'm very much in favor of choice. So a lot of the activities, you can pick and choose which you want to do, and you could build a whole critical thinking curriculum from the activities in the book.
Wow. Which
I mentioned in chapter 3. We try and pitch activities at a lower level, at an intermediate level, and at an advanced level. And what I mentioned in the book is that, well, you know, you can take aspects of the beginner activity for the advanced, and you can, you know, make the advanced activities easier for beginners.
Yep.
So although they're labeled as so, it's really up to the teacher to look at the activity and think, well, what's going to work in my classroom, with my students, with my particular context, and run with it. So that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah, I would just add in there too. I was a teacher for the first 15 years who just did every activity in the textbook because I thought I was a little too pure and thought I should. But asking those teachers to take that leadership role of deciding what works for their students and tweaking up or tweaking down is a great tip, I think, to ask teachers to have the confidence to do that with your materials.
I know Phil and I have talked about negotiated syllabus in a previous ITDI session.
Yeah.
And I think it's activity 21 in the book, where the students, the teachers can introduce different logical fallacies to the students. And if a student is familiar with that logical fallacy, maybe they can skip that. Or if it's of interest to the student, they go, oh yeah, I would really like to know more about this. Then you can choose those activities. So from there, you can negotiate the syllabus.
Yeah.
And I definitely wanted to get that in where, you know, Greg and I wanted to get that in where you would get that freedom of choice, which is also critical thinking, where you're negotiating the syllabus. You're thinking critically about your own education, you know.
It's kind of a choose your own critical adventure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good. Good.
So
Also, sorry, I'm also a big proponent of getting students to, after they've learned in the classroom, to take that learning experience out in the classroom. So a lot of the activities at the end, they have okay, now you've learned this logical fallacy. Your homework for that week is to listen out for it in the news or listen out for it amongst your friends. Get an example and bring that in the next week. You know, so if we're learning about red herring, you know, does anyone do a red herring fallacy with you that week?
Yeah.
Keep a critical thinking diary, write them down and bring them back and give real examples in the classroom the following week.
Let's tease the audience just a little bit and tell them that you've actually got a couple of your activities to show us later in the hour.
Right.
If people stick around, we're at 35 in the class in Facebook right now. That's a great little group of people. Phil, you were going to jump in with a question, and I was thinking we want to get into the topic of critical thinking here pretty soon.
Yeah, so it's great to see how, you know, you've kind of merged together your skills and looking at things from both having a theoretical background and to the practical side, seeing things in how they evolve in the classroom and how you implement these critical thinking ideas and activities. And I'm sure everyone's very much looking forward to seeing those. Just backtracking a little bit so we can kind of get everyone onto the same page. Would you like to share with the audience and everyone here, you know, what is your take on, you know, what is critical thinking and so on, so we can start there.
Yeah, I was going to start with the same thing, saying it's one of the most overused words out there and possibly one of the least understood to a certain degree. So we always start discussions with definitions of terms. Do you want to share something, Andy, or open up something? Where are you going to go?
I'll pass that over to Dr. Hadley.
Thank you.
Why, thank you, Dr. Boon. Well, the thing is that, yeah, there are lots and lots of different definitions for critical thinking. If you want to use another example, it's like, how do you define motivation, right?
Oof, nice.
And so the working definition that we have is it's intentional in the words that are used. So we define critical thinking as a teachable mental skill that enables a person to ask questions, uncover the underlying beliefs and assumptions of the messages that they encounter during their daily lives. Critical thinking means that they respond in an intellectually humble manner so that they look for better understanding. It's not a sense of one-upmanship. It's to understand better, to look for better solutions, and to discover more knowledge, to discover more facts, and also to get closer to truth. There is not a case of your truth, my truth. There's a notion that together you can get closer to more truth that's shared between you.
Wow, I'm blown away by that. That's just so well, every single word, the intellectually humble fashion. Is that your own phrase, Greg?
I'm sure someone else has said it.
Oh, it's just, yeah,
someone else has written it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
nice.
it's really refreshing to hear that definition and how deep you've thought about it, not just from, you know, the teachable mental skill and asking questions, but how we respond. And it reminds me a little bit about, you know, the purpose of debate. And often people have competitive debating for points and so on. But, you know, a professor once said to me too, you know, it's that same thing. The purpose of debate is not just to win the debate. The purpose is really is to, you know, find better solutions and get closer to that truth, as you've just said perfectly here.
Right.
And respecting one another in the process.
Yes.
Exactly.
So not close, not, you know, I think often, and Greg and I talked about this for many, many years, about the problem is in today's society is when you disagree with someone, you immediately build up a barrier and then you try and knock them down without actually listening. So we wanted to get into the idea of, you know, before you point out weaknesses in someone's argument, it's very important to listen and understand and be able to respectfully point out a weakness in the argument.
Oh, my head is just racing, but I guess a question that fits right now is that where there are so many different areas and directions you could have taken it, are either of you able to remember at this point what was your purpose, your overall purpose, which I understand in the definition you've just given, but if you figure we've got so many pages in this book, whoa, how are we going to lay it out? What are the big themes we're going to address? Does that fit as a question right now?
Yeah, I think I'll start it, and then Andy can continue with it.
Yeah.
We wanted to, first of all, address the issue of whether or not critical thinking can be taught to second language learners. You know, because some people would say, well, yeah, I agree. No one's going to be against critical thinking. You know, no self-respecting teacher's going to say, I don't agree with critical thinking. We should never teach it. But when it comes to second language teachers, they'll say, well, yeah, it's important, but my students are just too low level to be able to do it, or my students aren't smart enough to do it, or they'll say things privately that they may not want to say publicly. So we wanted to address that.
Yep.
It's a bit of, and of course, because we've written the book, the answer is yes, and we do. we explain, you know, why we think that critical thinking can be taught in a second language context, and but we also point out the reasons why people think it can't be taught, as well as and research and such. We don't have time to go into all of it now, but so we wanted to do that. We wanted to say yes, it can be done. Yep. You shouldn't be seen as the one to be held responsible to do all the teaching of all the critical thinking. We should try to network with other teachers, first language teachers, other discipline specific teachers in your institution who might also be doing it as well, so that you can work together to have a critical thinking curriculum going on to help your students to think better, to listen more intently, and to, again, humbly look for a way to find better answers and better solutions, and to get rid of, the distractors when people are trying to, governments, and corporations, and all sorts of people on social media are trying to mess with your mind with, stuff that's not good. So we want to do that, and provide the people with activities, lots and lots of activities that they could use in their classroom. But then finally, we also wanted teachers to have ways of conducting research to find out if there's been any impact of all of this amongst their students, and not just simply like passing out a questionnaire and saying, so do you feel like you have more critical thinking skills? Yes. Oh, it worked. No, but really try to find ways to investigate the potential for impact. And so those are some of the things that I think we really wanted to do. Critical thinking can be done. It can be researched. It's a possibility in your classroom.
And it's a process. It's a process of becoming a critical thinker. It's not something that you do overnight. And as a process of working on this book with Greg, I began to see logical fallacies in everything that I saw outside in the world. When I was on Twitter, which we mentioned before, which I'm no longer on, I began to see the wonderful fallacies of politicians and how they would tweet something that you know, the average person is just accepting at face value and going, I believe this is true, but they're being deceived. So we want our students, so I mean, if we go back to philosophy and Socrates says we should question everything and not accept it, question everything. So that's an important skill for students at whatever level they are, to begin to question things. You know, ask yourself questions. Don't accept just because the teacher said this. Don't accept it. Question it.
Yeah,
and I think that's important.
With the proliferation of social media and fake news, it seems like this book couldn't be any timelier. And as you're saying, a real necessity. I just immediately scratched down for our all four of us were in Japan, or three of us are in Japan right now, but do you think there are cultural elements to taking on that responsibility? You know, certainly in the classroom, it takes me a while to get students to question my thoughts or ideas because I'm the omnipotent teacher in the Japanese. What's your experience with that, Andy, first?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because, you know, we may be in a culture where students will be sat in the classroom and the teacher is on a raised lectern, a raised platform in front of the lectern. No, I am almighty. Don't question me. Whereas when I taught in the UK, students would challenge I was teaching literature. Students would openly challenge my interpretation, and it would, you know, spark a very interesting debate on D.H. Lawrence, which I was teaching at the time. Whereas here you may get a more passive, reticent, you know, response, where we want students to actually think more about the message and think, well, you know, and go beyond, you know, like the other day in the classroom I was teaching, and it was, I can't remember what it was. Just let me think, because it was Wednesday. Lots happened since then. We were looking at a Hawaiian island, and the question was, after watching the video about this beautiful Hawaiian island, I think it was Molokai, would you like to live there? Everyone stand up, and if your answer is no, go to the left of the room. If your answer is yes, and then I wanted to know why. And then why do you not want to go there? Because I like Japan. But that's not a reason.
Right.
Why do you like, you know, go beyond, go further, and just getting students to think, well, beyond the easy answer, and try and give more in the classroom, and try and think more about the argumentation. I don't like hot weather. Right, brilliant. You know, Japan has 4 seasons. Molokai is a hot place. I want to, you know, I don't want to live in a hot place. I don't like the hot weather. Okay, well, that's a very good reason. Now you can sit down. Okay, who's next? So just something as simple as that with low-level beginners, just to get them to go beyond and give more reasons. That's a start of critical thinking. You know, where you don't give the easy answer. You know, why? Just because. go beyond. Give some valid support to your argument.
Right. Yeah. So this is one of the things that sometimes gets misunderstood, and even myself, I think, when I was looking at critical thinking and looking at how we teach it as a master's student, often when we look at kind of critical thinking, it can be at a higher academic level. So people think about, you know, a way of looking at critical discourse, for example, which is thinking of questioning frameworks and so on. And these require quite a high level of language. And on the other hand, a teacher once introduced me to lower level critical thinking, you know, maybe just start with trying to get them to understand how they gain facts by asking WH questions and so on. So I was just wondering if you could summarize, you know, how you see developing critical thinking along that line, from where do students start to where do you see they might begin? So where do you think they might go?
And just at that moment, Maria in Ruben in Ukraine has just said something like, the more often you ask students why questions, the better they begin to become critical thinkers,
One of the activities we've got in the book is the why game.
Yeah.
So I love football. Why? Now roll a die, and if it lands on 6, you're going to give 6 reasons why. That's one of the activities that maybe at this point, if we go to the critical thinking cycle, and that would answer Phil's question about where we see the start.
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna share this, and then I'll get Greg to talk about it, if that's
and
all
just
right.
While you're doing that, Andy, to tell the audience that at some point, if we can ever tear ourselves away from you two, we're going to invite everybody to come in and have a bit of a free-for-all. But we're breaking many rules tonight, so I'm going to let Phil call that one when you figure it's time to bring in. We've got 30 people in the room right now, and some of them might want to come in and ask their own particular questions. But go ahead, Andy. I'm just filling.
So we'll share the cycle, and then I'll share one of the activities that relates to this, which can be done at a very, very low level. And I'll talk about how I did this semester. To some great degree of success. It worked really well. So let me just go to the cycle. I'll show this slide, and Greg, if you'd like to talk about this.
Sure thing. But before I do that, it was just going back a little bit to some of the things you were saying, is that there's often a danger of falling into an Orientalist view when it comes to critical thinking, that somehow Asian students may have less critical thinking skills because of their education or their background than students in the West. But sometimes the issue of the answers that we get from students are language issues. They don't have the language to go there. But there's been a number of studies. I've got How in 2007. I've got another one here, Lun et al. 2010. Is that what often you find is that you have students in Japan learning different critical thinking skills that they don't necessarily have not necessarily been encouraged to use in a second language context. And we have Western students who use other critical thinking skills in their first language. And they've, of course, never had a chance to many of them have not had a chance to do that in a second language context. So there's a lot of critical thinking going on in both Asia and the West. So oftentimes they're focusing on different aspects and there's not so I think that needs to be
excellent point.
So so trying to put bones on critical thinking is, if you look at some of the education books on it, everybody's got models, and some of them are really, really complex. So we tried to simplify it in how you could get students, and actually yourself as a teacher, into the practice of thinking critically. And the first one is this, what you see there, of developing dispositions. And what this is to encourage students to become more critical towards their own ideas and beliefs, and teachers as well. We have activities where you're actually to do self-reflective activities to find out, where am I wrong? What do I not really? What do I believe, and what do I really know, and how little do I know? Because it's important to cultivate humility and openness about how little you know, and just have students know how little they know about a particular topic, and then use that as a spur for curiosity to hear other viewpoints. Receiving is to learn our activities and the dispositions for learning to listen carefully to another person, and also learning to ask critical questions, why questions, of course, but asking more and more specific questions from carefully attending to the words and the implications. But then the implications are actually in the next stage, reasoning. After you've heard and asked questions, then you have to start thinking about, where does this person's ideas, or we call it critical thinking, an argument, where does it go potentially? And that's the place where you can identify weak points, logical fallacies. And logical fallacies have got so many lists and names, and there's lots of combinations there. But basically, a logical fallacy is anything that moves you from seeing the truth of an issue, anything that distracts you in one way or another. It moves you into a different direction. And identifying those, trying to find a way to get back to the point. Then responding is not this point of, aha, I found you wrong. You, sir, are a fallacious arguer, something like that. You instead, you would say, you have to say, let me see if I understand what you've been telling me, because I really want to understand, and be able to restate that in a way that's so faithful to their argument that they would say, actually, the way you put it is even better than I put it. That's the ideal. And then once you've shown that you've understood, if there's anything that needs to be rebutted or questioned in terms of searching for better ideas or more accurate knowledge, then you respond in that way. And you continue to go through this in multiple cycles throughout a curriculum of critical thinking. So it's knowing yourself, listening, thinking carefully, and then talking together. This is our framework that we use for the book, and all of the activities that Andy has designed fit within one of these areas.
Yeah, that's very, very clear. Thank you.
So just to recap, so dispositions comes with kind of several different definitions sometimes. So, but in this context, you're using it to describe how we understand our own position or tendencies or way of thinking.
Correct.
It's also a starting point to becoming critical.
Yeah. You could think of it as developing attitudes, developing a mental position, because sometimes dispositions can be used in terms of someone's temperament or a natural disposition. So, but we're using dispositions in the book as essentially a mental stance. Right. How you place how you locate yourself in this area of knowledge or the issues related to truth of an issue.
That makes a lot of good sense, especially sometimes if people talk when people talk about how do you bypass people's critical thinking, like when people want to manipulate them through media or politics, sometimes people do say you appeal to their biases and their beliefs because you can therefore bypass the brain.
Sure, but another problem is that if you don't develop a disposition of humility about what you know that you don't know, then all you do by teaching students only about logical fallacies alone, then they just become spinmeisters, because all they do is they just listen for the mistake so that they can try to say their thinking without actually really thinking about the issues. They're not listening. They're just trying to catch someone for an I gotcha moment. And if you don't, so only teaching it simply as a skill without developing this sort of disposition just turns them into sophistic thinkers. They're spinmeisters, and that's doing disservice. That's not critical thinking.
Right. Nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can then introduce an activity which is about developing dispositions. It's actually the first activity in the book, and I use this this semester. I had a new class, and of course you want to do an icebreaker activity with students in the first class, and an ideal activity is a true or false game. So I, as the teacher, I'm going to model the activity, and I'm going to make 5 sentences about myself. Maybe one is false and four are true. Yeah. And students have to guess if it's true or false. So, I think I said, I'm married. I got married in 2019. I've worked at Toyo Gakuen University since 2005. I speak Italian. I play the guitar, and I've written many books. So students work in teams and try and guess which is true and which is false. But the idea here is that you add a critical thinking element to the activity. Once they've guessed correctly what's true or false, you don't end there. You go back to the true ones. what proof would you require to know that I am actually telling the truth? So let's go back to, I got married in 2019. It's true, but what evidence would you need to show that is true? And so they work in teams, and finally there were, some students are going, marriage certificate. Yeah, that would be a document that would prove that I'm married. So that's good. That would show the truth. I've worked at Toyo Gakuen since 2005. How could you show that? How could I show that's true? What evidence would you require? And one of the students said, your pay slips. Show me your pay slips, which is a great answer. And then when it got to the I've written many books, I thought a student was gonna say, well, show me the books. One student put a hand up and went, I've just checked your name on Amazon. So I was like, wow, great, superb critical thinking. So once you've done this, then you put students into groups of 4 to do the same game. They make 5 sentences about themselves. 1 is false, 4 are true. They have to guess which one is false, which one is true. But then after that, go to your true sentences, and what evidence would you require to absolutely know that that statement is true? Because anybody can lie. I could say I play the guitar. I could be lying. So it's that process of becoming critical and understanding that people may not tell the truth. So what evidence would you require to actually believe the speaker? And that's a nice opening activity.
Very nice.
For an icebreaker for first day. And that's just adding, we've all done true or false games before, but just adding that critical thinking element where, okay, let's think about the true ones. What evidence do you require to absolutely believe that I'm telling the truth?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Phil, what are you thinking about the letting people in or not yet?
Can let him in.
Phil, you may be muted.
I did mute myself just for a second so that my keyboard wouldn't interrupt you. Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to copy the link over and I will drop it into the Facebook chat. So as we do in the past as well, we would like to allow anyone in the audience to come into the room. You can talk and ask questions directly with everyone here. If you want to come into the room but just use the chat in Zoom, that's absolutely fine too. You don't have to be on screen. If you turn your camera on, you will be in the Facebook Live as well. But if you keep your camera off, you won't be shown at all. For everyone else, if you want to just continue asking questions and add comments in the chat, that's absolutely fine as well. So let me just grab the link and then I will drop that in.
Wayne Malcolm is claiming that he has looked through your Facebook profile, found a video of you playing the guitar, but saying that it could in fact be dubbed. And then he's also saying that he's seen you play live, so he's now a believer.
But that could be my twin brother.
You don't have a twin brother.
So, you could, I mean, at a very basic level, you want students to identify a very basic, evidence, but then you could even push it even further, like, well, I might be fake. I might have put fake books up on Amazon. It might not be,
Yeah.
Phil, are you dropping the link into the Facebook? Are you or?
Yes, it's in the Facebook chat and it's also pinned to the top now. So you should be able to find that a little bit more easily.
Well, I wonder if people might need the password for the Zoom meeting as well, because it's there as well. Yeah,
it is as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for checking.
Sorry to interrupt you, Greg. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that there's a difference between critical thinking and cynical thinking. So critical thinking is a truth-seeking effort. So one can ask questions, so many questions, in order to move away from the truth of trying to understand the situation better. So this would be a case also where people, if they just get too much into the techniques, all they do is they strengthen their uncritical thinking dispositions. So yeah, I mean, we should be very careful to balance our students out so that they stay open-minded that they seek to be more self-confident and truth-seeking and inquisitive when they're doing these activities.
In total, Andy, what's the number of activities and that you have in the book, and are they evenly distributed between low, medium, high?
Yeah, there are 93 activities in the book. There are 20 related to the critical thinking cycle, and there's 5 for each of the steps of the cycle. Then there's a negotiated curriculum activity based on logical fallacies. And then we focus on 24 logical fallacies. And for each fallacy, there are 3 activities at different levels. They're color-coded in the book, or the shading in the book. So it's very easy. If you get the table of the fallacy, you can see, okay, this is the low, intermediate, and advanced activity.
Great. Just while we're at that point, we'll welcome people coming in, but I had a question about, in ITDI, we have this Great Minds in Language Education, where we take some kind of popular, well-received book, and then we've done a course over it where we go through it together. And a couple of those courses, we've taken books that were just beat us to death with the kind of accessibility or the learning curve that was needed to get enough out of the book. So I'm asking the question directly to you guys. Can you tell, a high school teacher in Japan who's excited about these ideas you're sharing, how accessible is this? Or do you need to have finished your PhD to be able to get something out of it?
Each of the activities has a step-by-step guide to how to do that. And also, if there's a worksheet involved, there's a worksheet included at the end of the activity that you could then create your own worksheet from. I do recommend that teachers research a little bit about the logical fallacies. We have a basic definition of the fallacy, but so in chapter 3, where I talk about how to implement the activities in the classroom, I do suggest that teachers do a little bit of research on the fallacies, just so that they're absolutely sure about them, and that they may want to introduce fallacies that are mentioned in the book. We could only mention 24 of them. So, but for a novice teacher picking up the book, flick through, okay, I want to do this activity. There's a step-by-step guide. If there's cards involved, there's cards that you can photocopy and make your own material from. You can adapt. So I think it's very accessible.
And before the activities and after the activities, some of the kind of theoretical underpinnings. Is that accessible as well, Greg?
It is. We worked very hard to make this a conversational book. So this is not a book that comes where you have someone coming in with leather patches and a bow tie. This is more of a situation of Andy and Greg, sitting with you at a table, having a cup of coffee with our shirt sleeves rolled up and saying, okay, let's talk this out and see what's going on. And the research section is step by step, lots of pictures, very accessible. If someone's got a bachelor's level of education, they'll be able to get through the first 3 parts well. If they're starting an MA course, or they're getting into doing teacher research, classroom research, then the 4th section will be really helpful. I see.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that, because that's really important, I guess, to make our research and things we want to share, make them accessible to as many people as possible. And I hope that was the answer. I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yes. Just before we kind of take any questions and comments from those who've joined us in the room here as well, I just want to backtrack a little bit. David Colson in the Facebook chat was asking, how much possibility have you found for overlap with critical thinking skills to be applied in students' other courses, including their first language?
Greg, do you want to take
that? So as I was saying earlier, what a teacher needs to do is to start to reach out to other colleagues in the school or this in the institution that they're teaching. It's that's good for the ELT teacher, because they may have been working in isolation anyway, right? And so searching for those who are also interested in doing critical thinking, who are doing it in their maths class or in other courses, find out what they're talk with them, tell them what you are doing, what you aspire to do, find out what they're doing, and then you can have a better idea what the students, what are the students getting in other classes. You can take some of those ideas and incorporate those in activities within your class, so that when the students leave your class and they go back into the first language in their other class, I'm speaking from a Japanese context right now because it may be different in other places, then they're still getting more and more exposure from different teachers and different styles for critical thinking. We often think, I think, language teachers, that we've got to do it all. We're all alone in the world, and there's this lack of connectedness. We don't have to do it all. We shouldn't. We can't. We need to look for those other people. And so, yes, definitely, there's an overlap if you go out and search for them and find them.
Also, I think it's going to be reciprocal. So, if students start to develop critical thinking skills within the second language, that's going to overlap into their first language, because they'll begin to see things in our context in Japanese and maybe not accepted at face value because they've become more critical. And that can only be powerful, I hope.
I'm curious if anybody in Zoom right now, does anybody have any questions they'd like to bring up? And don't be shy if you, yeah, there we go, John. I knew I could see on your face that you had the question face. Go, John.
Hey, Greg, remember me?
Hey, John, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well, thanks. Yeah.
Nice beard.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been working on it. Yeah, it's getting cold here. So, so I have a language school of my own, and I would say probably about 70% of my learners are young learners, and so I teach really small children, as young as 3. I have a lot of elementary school age children as well as junior high school kids. And I find that those children could really get a good benefit from an early start on something like this. And I was wondering how adaptable the activities in this book would be for younger learners.
I don't know. It would be like trying to use these activities with elementary school students in their first language. You're still going to have, we're talking about some developmental issues, with critical thinking. Now, you can do very simple critical thinking activities with elementary school age children, very simple, but you're not going to try to run them through a flight of logical fallacies.
Oh, of course not, yeah.
or but helping them to learn how to ask questions, helping them to learn how to listen, helping them to learn how to be polite and kind, how to be not to feel like they know everything, to challenge magical thinking. That you can do simple things, but this book is not designed for. I don't think it was. Andy might say, do you think it can work with preschool and elementary school students?
Yeah, I think it would take a lot of adapting, but I think some of the activities would be suitable. So definitely in the cycle that we introduced, a lot of those activities could work. We have an activity, for example, which is a listening activity where you ask a question, what is your favorite day and what do you do on that day? Could be one question. And then you listen to your partner and you draw a representation of their answer. Well, on the Saturday, I get up at 10, I go shopping, I watch TV. You listen and you draw a picture, then you show the picture and did I understand what you were saying? So something like that would work at a very low level. When we're going into logical fallacies in politics, it's going to be at a higher level. But something like the red herring could be adapted for junior high school students, where the red herring is, does this response answer the question, or is it avoiding the question? Because a lot of what their parents will do is red herring. So, hey mom, can I stay up late tonight and watch the football? Oh, the cat needs feeding. They'll be able to start identifying red herring fallacies from their parents and maybe calling them out on it. But so some of the activities would be adaptable, but it would take quite a bit of adapting, I think.
Yeah, John, just to chime in a little bit, I think with my young learners as well in that kind of age group, not quite as young as 3 anymore, but yeah, I see it as starting off with those WH questions. So they're building the skills, and then they're kind of learning as a framework. Oh yeah, I need to cover this just to gain my facts and so on. And then getting into how they use then WH questions as opposed to yes/no questions. And also how they respond. Do they respond and add some more information? Or if they don't want to talk about themselves, can they see somebody else doesn't want to talk about themselves? So maybe they're asking a question to other people and so on. So I think it kind of starts early age, but I don't necessarily label it as critical thinking to them at that age. It's just building foundations.
Another activity is the final stage of the critical thinking cycle is to respectively point out weak argumentation. And, if we, the teacher, make mistakes, students often don't point out our mistakes. So one of the activities in the book is a politely interrupting activity where, you might make a mistake and say, oh yeah, I was in Canada the other, I want to go to Canada, or I want to visit the capital city, Toronto. And the answer is, well, hang on, the capital city is Ottawa, and you've got to politely interrupt and correct the person who's made the mistake. And we have lots of examples in the activity where how you would politely say, oh, well, Canada's a great place to visit, but I think maybe the capital is Ottawa, isn't it? And a polite way of indirectly pointing out. So junior high school students might benefit from that kind of activity, which is a critical thinking activity where you're pointing out politely incorrect information.
Wayne's got a question.
There you go, Wayne.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. This is great. I learned about this literally about 45 minutes before we began, as I was chatting with Greg about various things. But yeah, this is great. My question is in maybe one comment, maybe the comment first. I was saying I think those activities, yeah, probably could work. Only that, like you said, be adaptable. But I just think it's a matter of getting access to those activities will then allow people the imagination to kind of think of different things, right? So the more activities that you can get access to, I think regardless of what the level is or et cetera, it definitely can spark some imagination. Because I wrote down the couple of activities you guys talked about, and my brain's already going crazy. Like, oh, that's great. I could do, this with these students, and that was, this will be a great introduction to like just very simple debating in my class about why, and then stuff like that. So I think it's just a matter of getting access sometimes to these activities, which people sometimes feel like, oh, do we have access? Can we do this? Like, what are some ideas?
Well, that's really good that you say that, Wayne, because Andy's got an example of something he did with his class on Wednesday.
I can show
That's
that.
brilliant. And could you show them that, Andy?
Yeah, well, that actually goes to my question. I was wondering, you had like 90 some activities, and I was wondering, how are you able to vet or test out or figure out just the kind of process of them with your students, and oh, this works really well with like lower levels, just go for that, or did you just be like, this is a standard activity that I've always done, here's how you would modify it or something like that? I'm just kind of curious how you work out, because that's a lot of That's a lot of material.
I've been teaching for a long time.
Yeah, it's placed within the framework that we have. You bring the students you have to helping them to develop their dispositions, to learning to to receive, to receive and to move through that cycle that we showed earlier. So you can pick and choose within that, so long as you're kind of moving the students along this way of learning to, their limitations, to listen, to think about what's actually being said, and then to respond, both to find the truth and also to highlight the weaknesses, such as what Andy is going to show in just a minute.
Greg, which activity you want? Do you want the Ivanka Trump one, or
The Ivanka Trump one? Yeah.
You want the Ivanka Trump one?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, you can lead us all through it.
Okay. Yeah. Ivanka Trump, brilliant. I taught this on Wednesday with my students, and we were talking about how to point out weaknesses in arguments. And here is a tweet by Ivanka Trump. The great thing about this activity was one of my students asked, "Is this a real tweet?" And I had the pleasure of saying yes. So I asked, what fact is Ivanka Trump trying to say here? And it's there in plain English. Then I asked my students, well, what's her intention? Why has she tweeted this? What would Ivanka Trump's purpose in tweeting this be? Can anyone answer?
To show that her father is a great president.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay, my next question to my students was, what date was this tweet?
2020.
This is 2020.
What big thing was happening in 2020?
Well, this is the pandemic.
This is the pandemic. And what was an effect of the pandemic? What were people doing?
Dying.
Exactly.
Dying.
Exactly.
And
not going anywhere.
They're not working. They're not working in the factories.
So they weren't working in factories, or they weren't taking flights. So maybe that's the reason why the greenhouse gases are down and at the lowest level in the last 3 decades. It's actually got nothing to do with the Trump government, and it's all to do with the pandemic. So this would be a very good example of a logical fallacy, a real example. So as I mentioned earlier, after we teach the students the logical fallacies, a lot of the homework activities, see if you can find them. And, if you're a bilingual teacher, it doesn't have to be done in English. See if you can find an example in your own language, bring it in, translate that into the L2. It doesn't have to be done in English. It could be done. The idea is that students are identifying the logical fallacy that you've taught them. That could be within their own language. It could be a conversation they had with their friend or their dad or their mum. Go back to the red herring example. Hey, I want to go out tonight with my friends. Oh, look, the TV's on. Japan's playing. Why don't we watch football? Well, you haven't answered the question. It's a red herring. So, identifying these and bringing them back in, you become a critical thinker because you're noticing fallacious arguments.
Anyone else want to jump in with a question? We got a couple of minutes left. You're welcome to not ask, or you're welcome to ask. Anybody?
Can I ask a question?
Yay!
Thanks a lot. So I'm a high school teacher who is going to conduct a lesson on dilemmas. So dilemma is a good point to start thinking about critical thinking, yes? And I wonder if there are some prepared activities, for example, dealing with dilemmas. So speaking about the doctor's duty who has to treat a patient, whatever the circumstances and the cost of the treatment or something else. To my mind, it requires lots of hard work. Yes, in order, most of us are short of time, the teacher schedule. And are there any prepared activities for this kind of issues, topics?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
That's a great question. I have to go through 93 activities to remember. Yeah.
And so what country are you in teaching high school?
I'm from Armenia, Yerevan.
Thank you. Great. Thank you for joining us.
So in terms of the dilemmas, if the person's going to have to make a decision, and the way the person makes that decision will be where critical thinking happens. And so you could make activities. There will be certain things you can adapt from the book, and Andy's right now looking desperately to try to find some right now as I'm talking. Is that, how does, you can have activities of the doctor providing information and then having the students to work on why they decide to do one thing or the other in this dilemma. I don't know exactly the dilemmas you were thinking about, but to work with the students to help them to understand how did they decide? Did they decide because the person was a doctor? The doctor was right? Did they decide because they thought that it sounded good? Did they decide because they found that this side had more research to support? Who were the people who did the research? I mean, depending on what you're going to do, you need to focus on how did they decide which way to go or which ways to go in the dilemma. Now, you won't be able to take simple all sorts of things that you have and try to shoehorn it into the activities or shoehorn the activities. You won't be able to do that easily. But once you understand from reading the book, understanding this critical thinking cycle and process, then you can start to focus not just the activities in the book, but you can focus on what's happening in your own textbooks and highlight issues that where you can get the students to think about the way they are thinking on a certain topic. So
it's also about the process of the justification of the decision they're going to make in the dilemma and whether that becomes a fallacy or not. For example, we've got activities in the book based on hasty generalization. So, I could say Critical Thinking by Greg Hadley and Andy Boon is the best book in the world because I asked 3 people. Well, you haven't asked enough people, so that you can't judge. You can't judge that it's the best book in the world because you've only asked 3 people. That kind of thought process that goes into the decision between which, the dilemma and which route they're going to take. That thinking process you'll find in the book. There isn't an activity per se, I think, on dilemmas, but there's a lot about the thinking process. You've also got the sinking cost fallacy, where you carry on with a activity because you've invested time and money into it. For example, my wife and I are watching a really terrible Netflix series, but we've watched 7 out of 8, so we're not going to give up now. We're going to get to the end of the series, although we watched episode 7 and we were bored. So when you're making that decision, have you gone too far down a path that you can't change your mind? So you'll find lots of activities like that, but I'm trying to think of an activity based on a dilemma, and I'm not sure there is one.
So just to chime in, if you're looking for activities for dilemmas in the classroom, when I've done that with my students in the past, I had a colleague who'd actually put down a list, but these days as well, I sometimes just, I look on Google. So for example, I might be looking for moral dilemmas is often a good one. I search moral dilemmas ELT, and for example, it might pull up some kind of worksheet and so on. Sometimes I use what I find or I adapt it to my own context. I can give you a quick share. So for example, just to show you what I mean.
But you can also look at it in another light too, in terms of this dilemma. Who says it's a dilemma? Who decides that it's the dilemma? Is it really a problem or not? You also can look at it critically in this way as well.
Yes. So I like quite things like this, for example. what would you do if you found an English test in the school bathroom? You can adapt these if you want to your context. You've got common ones. What do you do if you find some money on the bus? And then the reason why I like this kind of layout is you think about what you would do first, and then you speak to other people in your classroom. And then, like Andy and Greg were talking earlier, you want to find out the reason behind those dilemmas. And that gets back to, whether you add elements like from their book, like using the dice to find out number of whys and so on. So you can combine materials like this with activities that are being talked about earlier, like the whys.
It sounds like the book has like a toolbox of, through the activities, a whole bunch of different skills that you develop over time, and that you would then be able to apply those skills to things that you create yourself or find on the internet if they're not exactly in the book. So,
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, it means that.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to point out here that, to my mind, critical thinking has to do with problem solving and decision making. And here with dilemmas, we have a situation which either we base our decision on the emotion or on the logic. And because our lessons usually have a result, a conclusion, so this is unfinished because of this. Maybe it is because of the topic, do you mean what, do you understand what I mean? So how can I conclude a topic? So it doesn't have any answer, yes? This problem can't be solved. And which answer, which decision can be considered appropriate for this or that situation?
And how do you support, how do you support that?
Critical thinking is more, problem solving, decision making is one part of critical thinking, but that's that you can't have critical thinking as defined only by those terms. There's much more to
I guess the practical question is, how does she, when you get an unresolved dilemma, how does she wrap up the lesson, and what message do you give to the students?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because I don't know the dilemma. I don't know the situation. I don't know the students. I don't know any of this. So it's an ambiguous question. So you have to try to find out more before you can, again, asking questions to find out more about the situation before one could give an answer to it.
Good. Yeah. And Wayne, it looks like Wayne has something wise to say.
I don't know, wise. I would just say, don't answer the question. The conclusion is like almost what Andy said, as homework, take it into the real world and see if you can spot these things, this thinking process, use this thinking process. I think that's one of the things we often I don't say get scared about, or feel maybe as teachers, we have to conclude a lesson and feel like there has to be this wrap up, where the wrap up could be, okay, go and think about this, and come back with your conclusion, right? So the students are now set this task, this dilemma, and they have to come up with their answer based on whatever research or facts that they do. And then the teacher just accepts those conclusions, unless they're obviously destructive and your student comes back, well, I want to burn down the world. Maybe we need a bit more counsel then. That's, there's a difference there. But I'd probably say in most situations, you can allow the students the breath to conclude it themselves and think, what are they going to do with this? I should just say that I've done a bit of research on dilemma analysis. So I'm speaking basically from research that I've done on it and those things. So it's just, that's just want to say that.
But you see, then also you can, well, just quickly, the students will come back with their ideas and their thoughts on what to do. That's where you can start to do the critical thinking, you see?
Yeah.
Because what if a student says, this is the solution because this is the way we've always done it, and it's always worked. So why should we change anything? So this is what we're going to do.
Going off one of the examples on Phil's sheet that he just pulled up there, you find some money on the street. Do you keep it or do you hand it in to the police? What do you do? It's a moral dilemma. What you could then do is get the students to go out and ask their friends as a research homework and pose the question to them. And then they critically analyze the responses. If all of their friends say keep the money, they could make a moral judgment. Well, hang on, this isn't right. We need to hand that money in. But they're making that analysis themselves from what they're hearing from the outside world. So they're doing some nice homework based on one of the moral dilemmas. Go and research this with 5 of your friends in the L1. It doesn't have to be done in English. It can be done in the L1. And then you analyze their response and you determine, do you feel that your friends were right or wrong? And that's when the critical thinking kicks in with that determination of moral judgment of your friends. If all of your friends, if I ask Greg and he says, I'm going to put it in my pocket and keep the money, I'm going to think, well, maybe Greg is wrong. And then I come back to the classroom and go, I asked 5 of my friends, 3 said they would hand it in because if they lost their wallet, they would want someone to do the same, and 2 said they would keep it. So I'm with the 3 that would hand it in because I would feel the same. Then they've come to that conclusion themselves.
But you need to work with students to bring to the surface the assumptions that are underlying why they do this or that. That's the point. Maybe they don't know why they do it. Maybe they're afraid they're going to get caught and punished. They don't have any real moral reasoning behind it, or they might. But part of the using critical thinking in this process is to bring that to the surface to help the students to know more about why they do this, and then question: is that right? Is that valid? Is that logical? Is that reasonable?
Yep. I knew this was going to happen, that we're just getting going, and Phil has another appointment coming up soon. So we're going to have to wrap up. But to say thank you to everybody for joining us here live and on Facebook. We've still got 20-some people in the room who've gotten this far. I guess it would be criminal if we didn't tell people where they can find this book. Andy or Greg? Oh, there we go.
Yep, I've dropped the link into the chat as well.
Right, that's got the QR code as well, where there's 20% off if you enter that code.
Okay,
Excellent.
That's great. That's great.
FLE22.
Yeah. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Phil, do you need anything to wrap up?
No, I just had one other thing. One of the things that I think was mentioned earlier, maybe indirectly, but you highlighted basically that critical thinking is sometimes about different processes, learning to ask different types of questions and responding and so on. But also you highlighted that it's also very much kind of a mindset, and I thought that's really a valuable takeaway as well. Yeah. And it's important for us as teachers to keep developing our own critical mindset if we want our learners to have that too.
Lucky Phil, I've got about 5 comments. I'm biting my tongue and say, well, we'll do it in the chat later on. So thank you, everybody. Yes, great point from Wayne to ask if, Phil, if you can put that slide or that information in the chat as a visual that people can pick up the QR code or the necessary information.
Okay, I will add that. And
thank you, everybody.
Repost as well. Thank you very much.
Phil's gotta go.
I've got class, yeah. So yeah. Thank you very much for coming once again. Thank you for everyone in Facebook for all your contributions, your comments, questions, and just for being here and being such a fantastic audience.
Thank you, everybody. See you again. Maybe we'll be back in about a month with another topic. So look out for us. If you see us on Facebook or somewhere else, we're ITDI, the International Teacher Development Institute. And tonight we've been very, very lucky to have Greg Hadley and Andy Boon, who you guys nailed it. You just nailed it. It was really, really good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.